Well, welcome everybody. This is Corey Kogan from Franklincovey. I'm so glad you could join us today for this very interesting topic on leading our workforce through economic uncertainty. So it's going to be a very fast hour. A little bit about me. Again, my name is Corey Kogan. I serve as the Vice President of Content Development, one of the thought leaders, subject matter experts around number of bodies of work. And just delighted to be able to think through some of this that's going on with you, with the world today around economic uncertainty. So I'm just trying to get myself set up here, and I think we are almost. I have a wayward chat box. There we go. I want to be able to make sure I can see everybody. So I want to start off with welcoming everybody. First, I know we have a number of our subscribers on this call with us. I want to welcome you, meaning that you are subscribers to our All Access Pass. So I'm going to be talking about, this topic and our point of view on what's going on and utilizing, parts of our content and solutions and stuff like that. Anything that you see here, because you're subscribers, have access to if you think it'd be important to bring inside your organization. And you have an implementation strategist to help you design what you need for whatever the problems are that you have to solve. And for the rest of you, I know we have most of you who are brand new to Franklincovey. Some of you know us from 7 Habits. So like, oh, I read that book a really long time ago. Or you had a planner, or your parents had a planner. You're like, oh, the Franklincovey, that was a while ago. Who are you today? So I'm going to take a couple of minutes and answer that. And that'll take us into our topic. So actually, the 7 Habits and the planner were the springboards. They were so big. They were the springboards of who we are today, which is one of the largest and most trusted leadership companies in the world. It's a very big statement to make. So let me give you some data that goes behind it. What you'll see here is we do about 15,000 client engagements per year, live in person, live online in this day and age, across 160 countries. And our solutions on average are localized into about 24 different languages. And that $200 million number there is what we've invested just over the last few years in combination with the new $287 million for the next 5 years in upgrading our content, meaning updating it, new content, depending on what's relevant, what we learn from you all out there, and of course, a lot of investment in technology to continue meeting learners where they are in the flow of work, as they say. So that's a little bit about the frame of the house. And so your question is, all right, so do you still just do the 7 Habits or, what? And so just wanted to sort of, where do we zero in? Now, with all this experience we've had over the years, the amount of clients, we have 2 million subscribers, I think. We have a lot of engagement to understand what's going on out there. And what we follow and where we focus is knowing what the best performing organizations do well. And many of you will know this, but they do 4 things really well, because some of you do this really well. First of all, they're very intentional about developing leaders, exceptional leaders at every level. From frontline, really, because sometimes that's where it gets lost, from frontline all the way, to the top of the organization. They instill habits of effectiveness in every individual, right? So more important than ever, time management, project management, communication skills, social emotional skills, all of those kinds of things, from the CEO or the managing director to the frontline. Third, almost impossible in today's world. And as a thought leader, I have all kinds of research I want to tell you about this, and I'm not going to do that now. But this idea of having a high trust culture is just an absolute. And last but not least, we got to get results. And so best performing organizations use a common execution framework that really consistently gets their most important goals accomplished under any conditions, including the one we'll be talking about today, right? Which we're all sort of heading into. Why am I telling this again? It's because it's our focus. Everything we do at Franklincovey is only focused on these 4 areas. So why am I making a big deal about this? Because I always like to say what we're not. We're not going to be a library where your people can go learn how to write a resume, or even something really important, like create a pivot table in Excel. It's not what we do best. What we do best is zeroing in on these 4 areas and working to achieve collective behavior change with large groups of people to achieve a different result in these 4 areas. So we know you need some of that other stuff, but this is our DNA, and those that are subscribers understand how we put these things together to help organizations get to the results they need to get to. All right, so that's a little bit about us, and I want to get us into our discussion here on where we're at in this ever-changing world. And I'm going to start us off with a poll for you, because this is, again, it's going to be a fast now for 53 minutes, but I'm going to open a poll here that asks, this question, what, and instead of doing it as a chat, I want to give you some hints here to say, we all got some things going on. What challenges is economic uncertainty raising for you or your organization? And feel free, if it's not on the list, and again, this is how we gather our research, right? So it's so important for us to get your answers. You can put some answers in the chat if there's something else there as well. I'll be quiet and let you think. All right, I know people are thinking, we're over 60%. Katie, thank you for that ad. It's always an interesting one. All right, going once. That got a little bit of a pop. Going twice. Thoughtful, right? Maybe none of them. Daria, thanks. Global inflation. Okay. Going twice again. Okay, I ended the poll and happy to share the results, with everybody. I don't think it's a surprise. You see that first one. And Ruth Ann, thanks for adding yours there, and I'll come back to that. So fear of job loss, unclear. Isn't that something you'll see in a little while? I don't know where the organization, what are they thinking? Interesting that the remote hybrid took a little bit of a backseat here, but it is interesting how things ebb and flow. And then budget cuts of, some reality there. And then in the chat, Ruth Ann said, I selected other as my greatest fear is losing great talent that chooses to go to another organization for more money, sign-on bonus, etc. That's very real too. So, it's this is all very real. Thank you for sharing and validating some of our thinking as well. And I know we're all going to get through it, just fine. We always do. And I think, and I say that carefully. It's not meant flippantly, like, oh well, of course it's good. But you know what? There's a couple of things here, particularly if there's some of you that are newer in the business world, which you may be, and we learned this in school too. But even though it doesn't feel good and there's fear and stuff like that, and we'll talk more about that, economic cycles, are a given. And this is just from 1969. I didn't want to bore you to death and take you back, 100 years and all of that. And again, it's not that they should be treated lightly and like, oh, well, of course there's going to be a recession and all of that, but it is cyclical. We keep, we go through all of that. Point is, they're always going to come our way, which is its own problem because it makes us feel like, what we feel like right now, right? We're sort of waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, okay, and that's, fear, I'll talk about fear in a moment. And so many years ago, without social media, the ability to just fill us up with so much information, but, every day, the current headlines, right? The next recession. So how do you not go to sleep like, oh my gosh, right? And then behind the, well, is it coming? Is it not coming? We think maybe. And then, and I'm sure some of you are going through some of this as well. There are, layoffs happening now. And so, it's tough. And so all of this to say that ourselves, our entire, most of it, team, organization, really has moved into this uncertainty and fear, right? Because we're waiting for that shoe to drop. And it's actually worse for productivity than some other things, which we've been dealing with as L&D leaders and business unit leaders. It's a little worse than some of the other things we've been dealing with over the last few years. So I'm just going to do a little quick brain science lesson here to see why things may be slightly different than they were a few months ago in how team members show up and why. So again, very quick brain science here, but we're knowledge workers. We're paid to think, innovate, create, and execute. And so all of this always goes back to how do we think best? And so a couple things to remember. I'll keep this quick. 2 organizing principles for the brain. First, it avoids threat. First and foremost, and then it looks for reward. In that order, doesn't change. And the back of the brain is the reactive part. It keeps you alive. It's unconscious. It's instinctive, right? And so you can tell some of that of what's going on right now. And, the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, it's where we're very intentional. And we get over some of that fear and we think and we're rational and we have some self-control. We make good choices and we follow through and, all of those kinds of things. So that's a little bit of the brain science lesson, but here's the punchline that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And when I said this is more sort of destructive than some of the other issues we've had, over the last year or so, and I know you're like, where is she going with this? Team members have been proactively rethinking their well-being and where and how to work from a very conscious place, right? They felt more in charge, right? So you can see the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, the Great Reshuffle. It was an intentional, it was thought through. It's been coming. It's been bubbling up. So, that's where it was. They felt in charge, which is okay. That's not to say there's anything wrong with this, but when I think about how this was working for them, and while this was going on, our leaders had to learn some hard lessons about, and they still are, about moving from finally, and some of you that have been on with me before, you've heard me say this, move from a command and control mindset to more of a trust and inspire one. Those of you that have heard Stephen M. R. Covey recently speak so much on that, people can't get enough of that because it's just your style of leadership has had to change in order to create cultures where team members choose to give their best. Now, although these things, to Ruth Ann's point, these things listed are very real and are still going on, leaders must continue working in a new way. Because even a looming recession is much more fear-based, and it elicits a whole other set of reactions. So even though all of us, or whoever, I'm going to quiet quit, I'm going to look for another job, we're doing that very logically, very heady, and then uncertainty and fear kick in, and it's a whole nother ballgame. And the leaders need to be really careful because I get, what happens. It's like, aha, but now we've got them, they were quiet quitting. Well, and we react. Uncertainty and fear create knee-jerk reactions by everybody. And what happens? Cuts learning budgets. We are worrying about our jobs. And like I said, leaders are thinking about their teams. Boy, while they're looking at a job. So everybody is knee-jerking, having these reactions that is not healthy for anybody. Hence why I said, in my opinion, with this research and thought, it's really hurt productivity in a big way. I will tell you also it's tough because training budget, right? We talked about, we know that happens, but I got to tell you, this is when you understand some of the science of this and you think about ourselves as L&D leaders, this is critical that the intentional learning and development decisions you make today will not only have impact during this economic uncertainty or whatever's coming and the struggle, right? But way after, for the way you leaders lead and the way the workforce performs. It's really important. And this is whether it's working with us, whether it's working with whoever, whether it's working, however you do it, your decisions around development are really key in how you help navigate through and not just come to a dead halt. That we know from experience. Listen, how many recessions have we been through? We know from experience when we stop, the 2008 recession in particular, we saw training budgets cut, we saw training got cut. You had millennials starting to come into the workplace, baby boomers have been going out, and there was this glut of training for many, many years that really took a bite, particularly at the first level, really took a bite out of it. I think, people were being promoted at the age of 30 and the average age of being trained was 42. I don't think we can let that happen. Again, remember what I said, however you get that done, these decisions, how do we keep this going now? How do we keep our leaders thinking the way they were a few months ago about how they need to invite their people to the party? And how do we quell some of the uncertainty in teams? So there's three things that we and our leaders need to, I sort of distill this down, need to do really, really well during, economically uncertain times. So first, we want to lead the charge, meaning leaders of L&D, business unit leaders, got to intentionally, with the prefrontal cortex, lead the charge to calm uncertainty and enable proactivity in the workforce. And then second, leaders have to model real credibility and trust. We talked about a trust culture before, more important than now. And again, it renders me speechless because I don't know if I have a job. I don't know, but I don't even know what my leader's saying. We'll talk more about that. And not only that, Ruth Ann, back to your comment, which was so telling there, they have to model credibility to win the talent war during both tough times and good times. And particularly if you have fewer people than you want, they better be the best ones. You want to keep the best ones. And then third is how do we, do some intentional squeezing out or eliminate ambiguity so that people don't make up stories in their head and slide back towards fear and uncertainty. So let's start with some ideas around calming uncertainty and enable proactivity. Remember, I was here. And, again, where we say, oh, my goodness, I might be out of a job. What if they cut me as a leader? And really important is, for leaders, because this is, again, leading through economic uncertainty, what we have found is their knee-jerk reaction to resources to get things done. And again, could be knee-jerk. So let me stop talking for a minute and put a poll up for you. I want you to think about this. I'm going to open this up for you. When you think about your leaders, and in this poll, before I open it, there's some right answers and there's some wrong answers. It's only single choice, but so just think about the answer. But how do managers respond reactively about resources during economic uncertainty? And now that you know there's trick questions in here, it's going to be a slow start. There's a few right answers, there's a few wrong answers, so you can pick one. These are reactive managers knee-jerking We don't have any money. Okay, going once. Going twice. Going twice again. All right. So let me share with you. And, when you look at this list, so yeah, I mean, so think about this. And by the way, this is not leaders are bad. This is, we're just not thinking about it. At every level it happens, particularly newer leaders, but at every level, mid-level, even, hopefully not you senior leaders, but it just happens, particularly after a good run, where we've gotten things done and stuff like that. Oh, well, you know what, we don't even try. They won't give us any resources, or, you know what, they don't know what they're doing up there. Yeah, well, my hands are tied and I have no choice, those kinds of things. I want you to think about when your leaders behave like that. So you can see there's a couple of wrong answers in there, but they're the right answers to a different question. But these are just symptoms, they're behaviors, if you will, language and behaviors that you hear, and so you're probably smiling, thinking, oh, I know so-and-so. And remember what I said, doesn't make them bad people, and it doesn't make them bad leaders. They just might need to be tuned up a bit, right? That's what we're trying to get to. In some cases, leaders do consciously think about this. They unconsciously, it's like I said, unconscious. And sometimes, again, during these times, even if they were really good before, you slip into it. It's been a long couple of years, you just sort of fall into it, and their mindset has sort of solidified. Your brain cells rewire, they tighten up into certain patterns, and they got stuck here. That's the best we can do. Common mindset, it's the best we can do, given our resources. It's just knee-jerk in some cases. And the type of reaction I'm talking about, right? It looks like this. Boom, right? It's like, hey, we need you to do this, even though we cut 4 people on your team. And you're like, yeah, we don't have it. I can't, what are you talking about? They don't know what they're doing. And it's like that. The stimulus may be fear, obviously. It's totally reactive. And I know sometimes it's like, an email, you wish you could take it back. And there's a solution to this. I call it counting to 10. Franklincovey called it this. He said there's a space between stimulus and response. And I'll tell you what, the neuroscience, since Stephen said that as a principle many years ago, is totally on board with this, that there's a space between stimulus and response. I call it counting to 10. Getting out of the reactive mode and into the proactive mode, where we are like, okay, wait, let me just think about this. Now, remember what I said, it's all tied together. You need to calm uncertainty, leader is in charge, that kind of thing. And so if we are able to count to 10 and slow down, we can be models where we can really think through how to make things happen. And suddenly people start turning to you and saying, hey, boy, Ruth Ann really has her arms around this. Let's see what she's got. So the effective mindset we need to get to is this, you know what? I get it. Times aren't great. We may not, and listen, this is not nirvana either. We're not going to get this 100% of the time, but to count to 10 and say, we have zero budget dollars. They cut a couple people on the team, and we're going to figure it out. And again, I don't want this to be, this is not a Pollyanna thing. It may not work out, but it's a big difference between those two mindsets and how people at least try. And the team is like, hey, I'm in. If you're willing to give it a try, I am. And everybody together learns to very, very core Franklincovey principle. This is mental gymnastics for leaders and people. all leaders are people, leaders and individual contributors. So to say mental gymnastics of, all right, you know what? There's nothing that I can do really about all those articles that I'm reading before I fall asleep at night. And I saw the layoffs. I know maybe they're contemplating it here. Let me work in instead of laying awake and just letting cortisol flow through my body's killing me and my team. And maybe as a leader, even behaving in a way where I'm making the team worry even more, because sometimes we do that. How do I work in my circle of influence and less in my circle of concern? Let go of the things I can't do anything about. How do I make something happen? And so we say, instead of the reactive mindset, a proactive mindset by a leader around resources is something like this. I'm not asking you, I'm just going to lay it out here. Again, not Pollyanna, but just this awareness to, you know what? Okay, there's always a way to figure something out. We just have to, make the right case to the right people. We got to find somebody to talk to. And I know that you know this. I'll say it again. It's not going to work 100% of the time. But the shift in mindset, there's nothing we can do about it. And a team, a group of people watching that or listening to that versus, no, let's see if we can figure it out. Maybe we can. But who should we talk to? That kind of thing. Even if we couldn't do anything different, that change in behavior is huge. Ruthann, I'm going to go back to it, to keeping your people, your best people, and bringing and calming the fears of some. Now, a few things. I want to give you a tool, and those of you that are into Agile, whiteboarding and all of that kind of stuff. When we talk about resources, it's about 4 buckets, right? It's people, knowledge, budget, technology, or tools. And we like to call this the hidden resource finder. And again, this is the space between stimulus and response, right? We have a challenge. Hidden resource finder. We have a challenge. What is it? Here's an example. Okay, we need to onboard remote employees with freshly limited resources. What are we going to do? This is not rocket science, by the way. You all probably sort of do something like this, but it's very cool. You can do it by Zoom. You can do it, on a whiteboard. It's not hard, but it just gives us something to do to think through without going, oh my God, we can't do anything. And, we can say, let's start with the people. Who do we have? And you just brainstorm. And these are just, examples. How do we get executive engagement or increase mentors or influencers? Or maybe we should have department committees. And we're just brainstorming this. And then we move to, information. We can reach out to some other companies for best practices, learn, from our high trust relationships that we have, or identify different, style differences in our approach to, remote, right, to help better onboard, or have, maybe, better guidelines on office setup. These are things you all know. I'm just giving you a system to be able to brainstorm with everybody on it. And the team is engaged in this as well. Technology. How do we clarify, with our new employees, meeting management, or help them optimize the internal communication systems? And if we don't have, how do we get these? And last, on budget, if we don't have it, who does? And you can see, sell unneeded, obsolete remote work equipment. It doesn't matter if it's a valid idea or not. The idea is count to 10 and get, have everybody participate. And it's amazing what the potential that's inside of people, and you'll uncover something instead of, they don't know what they're talking about up there. So there's a tool that's really interesting and has a lot of power behind it. I want to dig in a little further on the people resource. Again, Ruthann, you had the last comment there, and it was, I didn't pay you to put it up there, but it is such a giant thing, right? Losing great talent. I think that's what I'm going to share with you, is a missed opportunity in both good times and bad, especially important now with economic uncertainty. And that is this comment here. Liz Wiseman, who is the author of Multipliers, which she originally wrote in 2008. She's a partner of ours now. So this comes from our Multipliers work. She wrote her work during the recession, and she identified this. And she said everyone has their own natural genius. And I brought her with me to share how powerful this is to uncovering the amazing resources that, unless leaders become aware, may stay hidden forever. So take a listen, take a watch. Liz Wiseman. Here we go.
We find that multipliers see people differently than other leaders do. Instead of seeing people as interchangeable or walking job descriptions, they look at people and they see what it is that they're uniquely and innately good at. I like to call this their native genius. It's what they do better than anything else they do, and better than the people around them. It's what they're going to do whether it's their job or not, and honestly, whether you want them to do it or not. Well, a diminisher may ask, is this person smart? The multiplier asks, in what way is this person smart? Finding genius is important because our biggest challenges tend to require something more from people, that unexpected spark of brilliance, that above and beyond energy that comes when people are doing their thing in service to something bigger than themselves. Simply put, if we can find somebody's native genius, it unlocks not only brilliant performance, but also discretionary effort. And when each person's native genius is understood across a team, it fosters a deep collaboration and creates a sense of belonging. When a leader unlocks someone's native genius, they get people's best thinking and work voluntarily. And when a leader does this for you, you get to go to work where your unique capabilities are seen, used, stretched, recognized, and appreciated by the people you work with. That's the kind of place everyone wants to work.
So I love this because I think we have resources right under our nose. And so I want you to, do a little bit of this. I want you to actually think of somebody, right? Think of somebody. And let me go back here for a second. And what I want you to do is, I want you to think about a person. And you see there in one, and I want you to think about, what does this person do better than anything else, or they do better than anyone else, or what do they do freely without being specifically asked? You know the people are like, oh yeah, boy, Mary loves to do blah. You know what it is, and they just do it really well. So I just want you to think about that person. And the next thing I want you to do, and I'll call it out here a little bigger, is I want you to think about that person and give it a name, put a label on it. We have such terrible labels in the world that this is a way to be positive about it, because, like the gardener, as an example, could be somebody who consistently cultivates and grows ideas, or the archaeologist could be somebody who has a natural talent for research and discovery. What I've been named is the distiller, because I can take a lot of information and sort of distill it down into, learning bites, that kind of thing. So I'm going to be quiet here, because what I want you to do is think of that person. You don't have to name them, but in the chat, I would love for you to put in, what would you name them? And you can put in why, because they blah. So I'll be quiet and let you take a moment to play with that. Okay, I know you've got a couple. I know they're going to pop up. Think of one person They do something really well. Tabitha, thanks for starting us off. So the communicator, that's a great example. Oh, Chris, the aim to pleaser. That could be that could be good, and I hope that person doesn't get overwhelmed. Tracy, nice. The crystal ball, the fierce facilitator. Oh, the mind bender, the fact finder. Oh, Joe, the surgeon. I can only imagine. The innovator. They are, thanks, Soraya. The innovator. They are constantly thinking of new ideas to aid an organization display. Great. The helper. Okay, really. First of all, this is fun, and I want you to think about the power of naming. Again, when it's done in a positive kind of, way. Now, caveat, the solution architect, we did this here on our own. It's really important to have this dialogue with the person and, and together I say, you know what, you do so well at this. I think this would be a great nickname. It's amazing how much they get from that. And organizationally, what this does, it allows you, I'm going to sound a little clinical here, to catalog the talent. Again, if there are layoffs, in addition to wanting to keep your best people, now know outside of the job description, sort of like Liz was saying, outside the job description, I sort of have a spreadsheet of all these people I can do these things, and I can point talent where I need to. So I just love this exercise. I think it's amazing. Again, a very proactive way to get at people resources. So again, this first part, calming uncertainty, being proactive, we want to make sure that we look for creative ways to get it done. Now, I'll tell you, leaders can name all the geniuses they want, but in economic difficulty, and not to be forgotten, when people are still quiet quitting, resigning on their own, et cetera, that didn't quite stop. It might have slowed. It's not as pervasive, but it's still going on there. People have learned what they can do. Leaders need to keep them, like Ruth Ann said. I think this is a fabulous quote from Forbes. Economic cycles come and go, but the need for talent is never ending. Companies that understand this will continue to invest in their workforce, even during recessionary times, so they can continue to win market share, even when revenues are down. And again, I keep saying this, whether it's with Franklincovey or any other company, or you develop your own stuff, that is the point. How do we help our leaders continue to move forward? So it takes us to our second piece here, where leaders must model credibility to win the talent wars. And here's a rhetorical question. I'm not gonna, it's not in the poll right now, but I'm gonna come back to it. So if you were thinking about your leaders, what percentage of your leaders are seen as credible? Now, let's define credibility, because it can mean a lot of things. This is Stephen M. Covey's work, from Leading at the Speed of Trust, and we call this the 4 cores of credibility. So to be seen as credible, we need to be seen as having high character, you see that on the right, and highly competent. You can't have one or the other. I mean, if you think about somebody who has high character, but they're not very competent, makes you a little suspect. And if you reverse that, somebody's that highly competent, but not so much on the character, you're a little suspect. So we need both, right? To that end, you can see also that character and confidence breaks down to these 4 cores of integrity, intent, capabilities, and results. So what happens with this, leaders need to ask themselves or evaluate themselves against these 4 questions. Do you have congruence, courage, and humility? Integrity, right? Are you congruent with, I don't know, the values on your office wall? Are they invisible, or do we live by them, right? Do you have the courage to talk to your people in this day and age and, candidly about what's going on out there in the workplace? Is your intent and motives crystal clear? I'm going to come back to this one. Third, are you seen as a leader, or are your leaders seen in this day and age of continuously upgrading your skills, your technical skills and your leadership skills? And last, do you have a track record of results. But the toughest one that gets us into trouble more than anything else, because a lot of times it's accidental, is intent. So I want you to take a look at this. See this? Does this look familiar? Anybody know what I'm trying to point out here? How many of you get angry when somebody in front of you does not signal that they are going to make that right turn? Right? I mean, isn't that, yeah, I know. Or the not, I mean, I could be a road rager. It is, I just think it's so rude. You can see, even now I'm lathering up at it. And here's the question for us to talk about. How many of your leaders don't turn their turn signal on either at all or fast enough for their people? And so, because people are like, what do they mean? Are they gonna, am I being laid off? Am I not? So a leader's intent, which could be body language, declaring intent is a core skill. Being real, here's my intent. And so who was it that said, Tracy, you said integrity. This flows out of integrity, right? If I'm authentic, here's my intent, and really clear and candid, whether it's good or bad news. Okay, so keep that in mind, because people are accidentally getting into trouble because their intent is not clear. And I can tell you a story, but even sometimes I could be working and, my face gets scrunched and people are like, oh, Corey's mad, what's going on? And I'm not, I'm just scrunched. And so I have to talk to my face, like, on Zoom, they're like, Corey, what's wrong? Nothing, I'm just concentrating, that kind of thing. And as a leader, I have to be very careful about that. So talk to your faces and teach your leaders to talk to their faces. All right. The way to keep character and confidence high is by excelling at key behaviors. And during economic times, and again, that's 13 behaviors of high trust leaders from Stephen's work, picked out a few for us. Based on integrity and great intent, you got to be really confident in this. Confront the reality of what's going on, need to talk straight, need to be very transparent, you need to listen first, and we need to extend trust. Two things here. You can't fake these behaviors, so back to integrity. And we're not talking about trusting everybody, which is what people say, oh, well, I should extend trust to everybody. No, we want to use smart trust. We don't want to blindly trust people. We don't want to trust, nobody. We don't want to just trust ourselves. We need to have a system in place to decide, should I extend trust to this person, or is it too soon? And there's a whole process there so that we know how to extend trust with low risk. And we also know how to have a conversation, with Tracy. Tracy, I'm not going to put you on this project at this time. Here's why. And it's a very clear. And if you think about the four cores, your integrity is great. Your intent is perfect. You're sort of new to the company. We want to work on your capabilities a little bit, because we know you're going to be great so in 3 months, we're going to try this again. So again, I did that really quick, but it's a really great trust conversation to have. How do I extend trust the right way? This combines itself with a leader as coach. So this credibility goes to, I need to be a great listener. I need to, coach Tracy, ask questions, help her learn, get her insights, and acknowledge with Tracy all the wonderful things that she's done, the past experience that she's bringing, that's going to make this lower risk in just a couple of months. So that leader as coach right now is more important than ever. So that was a couple of thoughts on modeling credibility to win the talent war. And last but not least, with that, we've done some of this. How do we eliminate, some ambiguity? So a couple of pointers, here, some things to think about. This is from the book Ram Charan wrote, What the CEO Wants You to Know. He said, understand the basic building blocks of a business and use them to figure out how your company makes money and operates as a total business. Fear and uncertainty. I don't get it. Why is the company not letting it? We had a good month, a good quarter. Why can't we spend? Or why are they hiring that person? Or and so really, however you get this done, just understanding the building blocks of a business. Cash is a company's oxygen supply, and cash is king and queen, right? Margin is what's left over after a company pays their expenses. You may know gross and net margin. Gross, anyway, there's just a little bit of information goes a long way, particularly on margin and cash and stuff like that, when companies are holding back. Velocity means speed, decreasing cycle time, increasing inventory turnover, and L&D leaders, velocity is increasing employee productivity. So again, the higher the engagement, the more work they are choosing to do. That is part of the business equation, again, particularly in times of uncertainty. And, business growth, we never want to, forget about that. Top line sales, bottom line sales, earnings per share, those kinds of things. Customers make the business hum. How do we continue to exceed expectations under any conditions? And how do we continue to grow even when it's tough? So again, that was a very quick lesson here, but do our people, new people at the front line, our managers, understand the business? Because if not, they're making stories up in their head for the wrong reasons, and they're getting mad at people for the wrong reasons as well. So a little education around that goes a long way. Communication is the biggest, talk about ambiguity. This is one of my favorite statements. Never underestimate the ability of people to misunderstand you. And I always like to say, you can laugh at this, right? We think about this. I always think about this at home. It seems to work at home. I am like, am I not speaking clearly? I get in trouble so much. I'm like, no, I really meant that to be nice. So I don't know if any of you deal with that, but I do. But this is a true statement. We're knowledge workers. We're paid to think, innovate, create, and execute. And so we're using our brains, right? And words are misinterpreted. We are remote and hybrid. Things are going on. We're making stories up in our head. How do we get crystal clear? So I'm going to put you to work for a minute. I have a little poll. It's not a poll, but you're going to do some guessing. We did another survey a while ago, and we asked folks this, where we said, we asked them, what % of respondents said, yes, my goals are crystal clear? We put that in the chat, not a poll. So what percentage said, my goals are crystal clear? Wow. Delana, that's I. So we got one right. I'm sorry I didn't have a prize, but you're all pretty close. But 33 is the right answer. 33 is the right answer. I'm going to have you keep your hands on the keyboard. I'm going to do one more. 33. So that means that too. Did you guess, Delana? I thought maybe you had seen it before. Okay. Well, today's your lucky day. I'd go, play blackjack somewhere or whatever, or go buy a lottery ticket. It means that 2/3 of people are not clear. And I think we saw earlier in the first poll, people said, not sure where the organization is headed. Well, it starts, I don't know where the organization is headed. I don't know where I'm headed, and it's scary. Okay, second one, as the time is flying here. Second one, we asked, what % said my leader and I have a clear understanding about my role and responsibility? What % said my leader and I, yes, we have a very clear understanding about my role and responsibility? Selena's not going to try this time. She wants to have a perfect record. Yeah. Good for you for trying. Okay, this one was a little bit better at 57%, but still almost half. And again, this survey also was done pre-pandemic. And I want to keep raising that because think of the context. In the office, next to each other, not out in the wild, meaning remote and all of that. So these numbers worry me. And we know from anecdotal conversations and our research that this has gotten worse as people are really, some that are remote don't have an idea of it. A lot, it's getting better, but these are some of the things we've been working on with leaders just before the recession started to hit. How do we do better work as leaders with remote and hybrid workforces and engage them? Okay, last thing on this, we have to move away from some of the remnants of performance management and really get clear here. So my last piece here, in the old days, the leader decides what they need to work on and maybe share it with them, but it's got to be done together. What are the outcomes so we're both really clear on it? They can't be ambiguous, but they can't be too rigid. We got to have some clearly defined targets. The leader's like, hey, I'm holding you accountable. Well, you know what? In this day and age, let's not forget quiet quitting and all of that, but we hold each other accountable. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring economically and stuff like that. Keep communication open. Let's check in once a week. How we doing? Because the better your people are seen as being productive, the better shot that they have at, being seen as high value, right? And this is still something out there. Time activity is the currency of work versus results and outcomes. So again, I'm trying to sort of slice this in the middle here of leaders not getting crazy, knee-jerking and micromanaging. But if we do those first few bullet points, how do we step back from our people? We're accountable to each other and they're off and running and people are doing some really good work. So finally, just the tool with this expectations agreement, get your desired results together, use, what are the guidelines so people know where they're going, back to resources. Let's figure out whether we use our resource finder or we already know, what do we have to make this happen? How are we going to hold each other accountable? And last, the flexibility, that the team member can get the work done without being monitored 24 hours a day. So this combination of value, leader modeling, it is really important, and letting the worker do the work. So again, I hope you saw, as we're coming to the top of the hour, the idea here is a cycle. Good times are ahead. So things are going to be even better if we do the right things now. And I shared a lot of ideas and tools that come out of our, subscription, so that, people are able to do the things that we talked about today. And again, I mentioned the subscription. The things that you saw here today are all pieces and parts of our content, and the subscription will give you the flexibility working with our implementation strategists to figure out what you need to put together in order to provide the impact that you need all for one price.